I have interacted with lots of different animals over the course of my life, mostly dogs. Want to know a weird fact about me? When I was a baby, apparently my first word was dog. I would chew on dog toys and try eating dog food out of the dog bowls. I was attempting to live like the dogs were, which I don't think my parents were too keen on. Anyways, my point is that I've always had an interest in animals of various types. One thing I've learned over time is that each different species has its own system of communication. Seems kind of obvious at face value, like no duh, of course animals have their own communication methods. But you're just gonna have to hear me out, because there's a big difference between the way we interpret their communication and the actuality of why and how they're communicating. Let's start with dogs, for example. I have seen lots of people, my family included, treat dogs as if they are capable of understanding the same things small children can understand. I'm going to say right now that humans have a fundamentally different way of seeing the world and understanding it than literally every other living thing on Earth. Dogs lack the brain structure to understand things that don't have immediate outcomes. You can't punish a dog an hour after the fact without showing what the dog has done. This is because dogs live mostly in the moment. They do not dwell on or ponder things that aren't able to affect them right that second. If a dog tears up a couch, the evidence of that is all over the floor where they can see it. They likely know that the couch foam on the ground all torn up means they'll be in trouble. This does not mean that they understand they shouldn't tear up couches specifically. It's that they're going to expect a negative response because the environment reflects a circumstance they associate with punishments. Eventually, they connect the pattern of couch destruction with punishment, so they stop doing it. The amount of people who treat dogs like small children is probably quite astounding, because the disconnect between human cognition and animal cognition is significant. We like to compare smart animals to humans, but a human brain is capable of understanding certain levels of context and nuance that animals don't even register to begin with. It's a whole different scale, like the difference between a 3D object and a 2D drawing of that object. They can reach something that looks like communicative depth on the surface, but they don't actually understand what they're doing. They are more or less mimicking the results of our internal processes. Here's another thing about animals I've noticed. You cannot train them out of their instincts. Dog breeds make this especially apparent. My family likes terrier dogs, but they do not do any of the high energy things that terriers need to do. If you're unfamiliar, terriers are basically pint-sized hunting dogs. They're bred for all kinds of small game and rodents all over the world, Europe and Middle America especially. These dogs have a very strong urge to hunt for and murder small squeaky creatures. Basically anything they can pick up in their mouth. They'll dig holes, chase squirrels relentlessly, and run around in circles until they can't anymore. You can't train dogs to completely stop doing these things, and trying to do so will stress the dog out and cause them to find other outlets. You have to offer alternatives. Don't chew the couch, chew on this toy instead. Don't dig holes in the garden, dig in this patch of dirt instead. Those kinds of things. High energy dog breeds require high energy activities. This is non-negotiable. Dogs are an easy example because they have been thoroughly domesticated and they are well understood as far as animals go. They are quite smart when it comes to domesticated animals, so they are also very trainable, and they retain pack loyalty instincts. This makes them very good for talking about animal behavior. But what about other species? Cats, birds, reptiles, goats, cows, otters, some fish. Basically, any animal that possesses the ability to process environmental cause and effect could theoretically be domesticated and form bonds like dogs do. They may not be as intelligent, and they may have more troublesome instincts, but being able to form some type of positive connection with them is technically possible. This is why you can find internet videos of people interacting positively with all manner of animals that are normally very dangerous or unfriendly. It's not that these types of animals can't be communicated with, it's that they are inherently more difficult to understand and they carry more risks. Let's take bears as another example. Instinctually, bears are more solitary, and the only exception is when the mother bear is taking care of her cubs. Those cubs will eventually grow up and leave, but they don't attack their own mom. If somebody manages to bond with a cub and replace this instinctual mother figure, they can be socialized to be friendly towards people, or at least one person. Now, bears are still very strong and very large, so even playing with a bear is a dangerous thing to do, because that animal has enough muscle and weight to hurt people even if it doesn't actually mean to. How about chickens? I helped raise chickens when I was little, so I was one of the people who interacted with the chicks daily, so they were socialized and wouldn't fight us over eggs. Chickens are simple, yes, but that doesn't mean they're incapable of learning basic connections. By interacting with them daily as they grew up, they learned that humans are part of their instinctual flock. Humans and chickens are basically the same thing to them, sort of. Later on, they learned that we often brought treats and we gave them food, so the only issue was with individual chickens who were less inclined to be held or picked up. The key here is that while some were feisty, none of them were actually attacked us or posed any real problems. They were already trained against that extreme negative response. This kind of thought process works with any animal. Even certain insects can show pieces of this process. The only thing stopping people from domesticating everything is the question of how risky it is to domesticate and what value domestication has for us. If you think about what humanity has already done the work on, they are either historically significant and useful, like horses, dogs, and cats, or they are commercially viable, like literally any common farm animal. The animals that are currently domesticated were done naturally through mutual benefit over hundreds of generations, or they were already prime candidates for it. Let's circle back around to my original point. Every animal has its own system of communication. Each one is distinct and unique to that species. You can't get a dog and a chicken to understand each other, for instance, but the cognitive process is largely the same between them, just at various levels of capability. If you watch the way chickens behave, listen to the sounds they make, and track the body language they use, you can eventually map out the animal language that chickens use. You could realistically do this for any animal, but the deciding factors are less about what's possible and more about what's actually worth the effort. There is a very large communication barrier between humans and animals, and this means it's pretty easy to miscommunicate with them. Miscommunications have consequences, and those consequences depend on the animal you had a slip up with. Chickens are very risk-free, so it could be easily done for chickens. What's the worst that a chicken can do to you, really, anyway? If you try to do it for a tiger, you'd probably end up mauled by it. That one mistake could cost you a lot. Technically possible and actually doable are two very different things, by the way. There are a variety of instinctual constraints that you have to account for each different species. Some animals are just fundamentally opposed to any level of positive interaction. Think like honey badgers. I don't think I've ever seen a honey badger have a single positive interaction, ever. It is genuinely a miracle that species is still alive. Your pets can't see the world the way you do, and the odds that they ever will without some kind of external technological help are basically zero. However, the bonds you share with them are still very real in their own ways. It takes time to build trust with pets, and it takes deliberate effort to create the environment for positive interactions. Animals don't really think about it, they just do it. They use instinct, intuition, and immediate feedback to navigate the world one thing at a time. Your connection with your pet is simple in nature, but it is a real connection, even if it's not a human one.